I'm Mike Pugh. I'm the Business Development Officer of the Forest of Bowland AONB. I thought I should start by perhaps explaining what an AONB is and why, therefore, we're in tourism. In England and Wales, we have national parks and we have AONBs. We have 10 national parks at the last count, although I think there's another one just being formed. There are 49 AONBs, and it's an area of outstanding natural beauty. And it was set up in legislated by the law in 1949, and its primary objective is to conserve and protect the landscape. We're a conservation body, essentially a protection body. Secondly, however, it said the account should be taken of the needs of agriculture, forestry and other rural industries, and of the social and economic needs of the local communities. And particular regard should be paid to promoting sustainable forms of social and economic development that in themselves conserve and enhance the environment. Sustainable development, 1949. Recreation tourism. Recreation is not an objective of designation. We're not there to promote tourism. But the demand for recreation should be met so far as this is consistent with the conservation of natural beauty and the needs of the local communities. So that's our remit, that's our mandate, that's why we're there. So how do we get involved in, we're not supposed to be in tourism, how do we get involved in tourism? Let me first explain a little about the AONB. It was established in 1964. It's about 800 square kilometres and about 16,000 people live within the park area. About 13% of that area is Natura 2000 sites, and apart from general biodiversity, the area is particularly important for the peat moorland that has been eroded and we're trying to restore. And it's also rare, certainly in UK terms, there are certain rare birds that we've tried to particularly foster and protect. 4% of the forest is woodland. That might surprise you. The word forest in English does not mean woodland. The word forest comes from a medieval French word meaning hunting preserve, hunting reserve. And the reason that we call it forest is because way back in the 13th, 14th centuries, the area was a royal hunting reserve. Not woodland. There hasn't been any wood there for 5,000 years. It's very much run on a partnership basis. We have, first of all, local government represented in the management of the park. There are 2 county councils cover part of the park. There are 6 boroughs or municipalities covering part of the area, and there are 54 parishes. Now, parish is an English word. I suppose it's the lowest level of local government, a commune. I don't know what the Spanish equivalent might be, but small communities of maybe 200 or 300 people in a rural area. We also have representatives on the management board for national organisations and NGOs to do with conservation, such as Natural England, you've heard about already, various environmental control and protection bodies, and also the wildlife protection, particularly the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, RSPB, which you might have heard of, which is obviously particularly interested in birds, but indeed their remit goes further because they consume the whole habitat of the area. We also have involvement in the management board of the private sector. So that includes various residential associations, clubs and associations involved with walking and horse riding and so on. The landowners and all of the property, all of that 800 square kilometres is privately owned. The state doesn't own any of it. And those landowners are involved in farming, in water catchment. Our biggest crop in Bowland is actually water. It's an important area for water collection for the urban industrial areas of Lancashire. Shooting estates. There are a number of large shooting estates. And finally, the private sector is represented by tourism operators. We have a company I'll mention later called Bowland Experience Limited. And our role, the things we do, is to provide, obviously in the landscape conservation, is to advise and encourage and persuade sometimes the land use and farming that we would like. We also provide advice on development and control of new building and development of both housing and other potential industrial development, although there's no industry apart from farming. We're involved obviously in biodiversity, and we have regard for plants, birds and animals of all kinds, and as I said, the whole habitat is an important area for us to guard. Heritage, social history, land ownership, boundaries and historic travel patterns we look at and try to maintain the history of those, and we're involved in local economy, both accommodation and products, both food and craft products. We also have a responsibility for access, and in Britain we have a concept of public rights of way for people on foot or for riding bikes or riding horses, and we manage that. We're also, in more recent years, become much more involved and interested in disability access, so we do various projects to help people who otherwise have difficulty getting around on their own. And again, in the UK, or in England and Wales anyway, 7 years ago, a new act came into effect to provide open access. So all that, most of that private land I mentioned, certainly the more remote areas, are all open to the public, subject to certain conditions, and we manage that process. Public transport we'd like to manage, but there isn't any. And the communities we're very much involved with in terms of the services they provide for each other and for the visitor. We're involved with education. We have education projects with the local schools. There are 26 first level primary schools in the area which we work with. And also a lot of work on getting people to volunteer, partly because it saves money, but more importantly to get people to engage in the work of the protected area and be part of it. Why do we get to tourism? Well, by the 1990s, we have a problem of rural farming. Farming is basically beef and dairy and sheep. And we had problems building up of various kinds, and the final blow was foot and mouth disease, which perhaps you heard about 10 years ago, which effectively closed the area. Closed the area for moving cattle and sheep, so it closed the area for farming, but also closed the area for visitors. So no visitors were allowed in parts of the area for a year because of the risk of disease. But if you have no farmers, that means there's no land management. We don't manage the land ourselves, it's their land, and we have to encourage them to manage it sensitively. And no land management means no protection or conservation. So we had to somehow find ways of sustaining that farming and those local communities. Because if there's no farming, there's economic decline, and there's no socio-economic value at all for the local communities. So what's the alternative? The only alternative for community survival was the visitor economy, or tourism. So we came into tourism really as a means to help protect the area, rather than necessarily promoting tourism for its own sake. So we thought if we were going to do that, we might find some kind of sustainable tourism. So we began the process and went through the Europark Charter process, originally in 2004-05, and we regard that not as a marketing brand, but as a management tool. And using the Europark Charter process as a way for both for ourselves, as the Park Authority, protected area, and also for the tourism operators. And in order to do that, we set a sustainable tourism strategy, which first of all said we had to find a sensitive way of managing tourism. There was no management of tourism, because it wasn't the remit of the park. There had been tourism, people visited it. The Forest of Bowland is what's sometimes called a green lung for the urban and industrial areas of Lancashire, of places like Liverpool and Manchester. You heard of Manchester? Yes. We're about 100 kilometres north of Manchester, and other cities like Bolton and Wigan, yeah, they're all in the Premier League. But those are the industrial areas that people can't come to from Bowland for a long time. But there was no management of tourism as such. We need to strengthen the performance of the local tourism economy in terms of providing the quality of product and the business effectiveness. We needed to have good quality visitor information available. We needed to make sure the visitor had a high quality experience, that when they went there they enjoyed it, and as Richard said, they'd come back again. And particularly we were interested in developing products which enable visitors to discover more about the area, both the geography and the local communities and heritage and food and so on. And going back to that original objective, tourism which supports the quality of life of local communities. There's obviously a conflict potentially between lots of tourists arriving and clogging up the villages so the local people can't move. And that sometimes there's a tension. So to that extent we need to try and manage that sensitively. And we began this process just over 4 years ago in a business conference which was called Save the Planet and Make Money. And the purpose of this was to demonstrate to tourism operators that they could be sensitive and sustainable and responsible, and it didn't mean they were going to be worse off. If anything, the reverse. And so we set up at that time a thing called the Forest of Bowland, Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, Sustainable Tourism Network. Deep breath. And the membership criteria First of all, members have to be located or operate in the AONB. And I say operate because, in fact, although the actual legal definition of the AONB has a boundary, we encourage participation from people just outside that boundary, because many of them are providing accommodation or services such as cycle hire, for instance, that visitors to the AONB will use for their visit. They must have an appropriate quality accreditation. They must be good businesses, providing a good quality service in whatever they do. And they also agreed to sign an action plan which would cover three things. First of all, working together to support and develop and sustain the local economy, working together as businesses, buying and selling from each other and that kind of thing, promoting each other. Secondly, to work with the park on conservation and environmental management and energy reduction, waste management, sustaining the local habitats and so on. And part of our role is to advise and encourage and sometimes persuade people to do those things. And thirdly, marketing and information. So they share in a part of the park's marketing, and importantly, they market to the visitors. We don't see the visitors, they come to the businesses. It's the businesses who deal with visitors. So they must pass on the principles and the ideas and the objectives of the park to their visitors. As of now, we have 122 member businesses, and that covers accommodation providers of all kinds, camping, pubs, hotels, guest houses, bed and breakfast, things like cycle hire, horse riding businesses, restaurants, cafes, and also some attractions, some farms that are open farms that have visitors, and particularly for educational purposes. And also we have a number of community groups who run community activities such as arts and crafts, workshops and exhibitions and that kind of thing. So those are the 122 members at the moment committed to sustainability. 48 of those were not in tourism 5 years ago. They've come into the business, they were in business perhaps, but not in the tourism business. And so it's over a third are new to tourism. And 36, that 122, are either farm diversifications or in some cases ex-farm. People have given up farming and gone into tourism. And the reason many of them have done that because they love the area, they want to stay there, they want to be there. And there's one farmer, ex-farmer said to me, this way I can still live where my father and grandfather lived, instead of getting a job in Manchester. I want to work in Manchester. So 122 members. That has led to development in the last 2 years of two things, which is putting the onus and the leadership into the business community. We've set up the Tourism Environment Fund, which is under English law established as a charity, which means it doesn't pay tax. And the trustees of this charity are 4 of the tourism operators. And the charity exists to raise money primarily from visitors, not from local people. Basically, we're trying to get visitors to put something back. And we have developing a number of visitor payback schemes where the visitors are encouraged to make a donation as part of their visit. And that money is then recycled by the charity into a grant scheme. It's a maximum of £500, which is only just €500 at the moment. But they're typically very deliberately small schemes for local communities to do things that otherwise wouldn't get done, just to improve the local environment. The second thing we've established is a company called Bolden Experience Limited. This is a trading company. It does things the charity can't do. Its directors are again the tourism operators, and 62 of that 122 I mentioned earlier, 62 of those people have now joined this organisation, become part of this company, this cooperative company, which is doing a number of things, which is taking over training those businesses in terms of the sense of place training that Richard mentioned, and visitor education about protected area. It's starting to produce tourist information, maps, guides, websites, and it's also looking at new products in terms of cycle holidays and the disability access that I mentioned earlier. And that's being done as a totally separate commercial private sector operation by that company. We work closely with them, of course, but they've taken on that role. So that's what we've been doing, and there's a picture of the Forest of Bowland in winter with one sheep. There are probably a few more over the wall. And I just want to finish by saying that I would say to you that this seminar is about the opportunity for tourism in protected areas. I would say tourism provides sustainable tourism provides an opportunity for the protected area to manage itself and get benefit from the visitors taking part in that. So good luck with that.